Mr. Atwater, you have talked about, since we last talked,
Right.
the problem of identity theft in
Right.
Florida. It's something that once someone gets a hold of your identity one way or the other, you
That's
can
right.
be in serious trouble.
Right.
And you talked about even some things that needed to be done on the state level,
Right.
even maybe within your department, about identity theft. What have you discovered?
This is a big deal. And you know that now we're seeing that people are trying to file their income taxes this year, and they're being told by the IRS someone's already filed with your Social Security number. It's a tremendous issue. We have the Bureau of Unclaimed Properties in my division, which is all those dollars that Floridians don't even know they may still have with the state of Florida. I have a vault with $1 billion worth of the money that belongs to our fellow Floridians. Last year I returned $210 million of that money, a record year. So I hope people would come and check our website and see if they've got money with the state. My bet is that they or a family member or a friend have money with the state they don't know about. But here's how this works. I continue to advertise that site. I spend every day with our team tracking down information, last known address, using all the information I have to get that money back to you. But there exists in this system in the state of Florida, and there are in other states as well, what are identified as locators. Locators are individuals who contract with the state to help us find individuals. And each week, I mail, by state law, those people who have signed up as locators, a disc of individuals in Florida whose property I'm trying to return to them. That disc contains specific information about those individuals. Again, last known address, birth dates, names, middle names, aliases, anything of that nature. But it also includes their Social Security number. Florida is the only state in the union that sells the Social Security number of its citizens to people who sign up to help find you. And so we have a bill this year in the legislature. When I saw that, and I said, the other 49 states are doing just fine. The locators doing business in the other 49 states are doing just fine. And I'm setting records at returning property. I don't need to be selling Social Security numbers. So,
Well, let me repeat here, just so everybody heard that.
yeah, right.
You, as CFO, are required under Florida law to sell Social Security numbers to locators.
That's right. I cannot keep that confidential by Florida's laws. That's correct. And so this bill in the
Are they
legislature,
prohibited from selling those numbers to others?
they are required to use the information for only the purpose for which it was intended. But I have 175, 180 of these individuals that are signed up as locators. By our records, only 58 of them have ever used the information for the purpose for which it was intended. They have never, ever provided information to me that they were trying to locate or did locate a Floridian based upon the information I gave them. And we know that by the information we have provided to these locators that fraud has been committed in these individuals' names. And so we are going after it. And our bill this year in the legislature is to say we will join the other 49 states and we will maintain the privacy of your Social Security number. And I sure hope that I could come back at some day in the next few weeks to even tell you that the legislature has committed to protecting the privacy of our fellow Floridians. I don't intend on selling one more Social Security number.
Good. I'm glad to hear that,
Yes.
especially if it's mine.
Yes.
Something that you've talked an awful lot about that you said in our last interview that you wanted to bring to the office of
Right.
CFO, particularly with regard to fiscal management, was transparency.
Correct.
Which is a big word.
Big word, right.
But what did it mean to you specifically, and what has it meant to you in terms of what you've tried to do as CFO?
Right. You and I already touched on this earlier about the trust in the people of Florida or in America with their government. Transparency is defined as accountability as far as I'm concerned. I'm accountable for every decision I make on behalf of the taxpayers of Florida, particularly when I deploy their money to meet a need that they have, because that money could stay in their pocket if I weren't taking it from them as a public servant or as an elected official. So the transparency we're working on now is, we covered that 60% of the entire state budget is delivered in the form of a contract. We are creating the Florida Accountability Contract Tracking System, FACS, and hopefully it'll be up and moving sometime later this spring, where every one of these contracts will be online. So imagine that, Steve, that every Floridian, every vendor who would like to compete for the work will see the specifics of that contract. We'll see what the price point was. We'll see what the deliverable timeline was. They can be saying, well, why don't we get involved? We could actually do that for less money. We could do that faster. We could do that safer for our fellow Floridians. Get in there and compete for the work. Drive down the cost. At the very least, put it online. And so that every Floridian doesn't have to travel to Tallahassee, doesn't have to do a public records request, doesn't have to wait and wonder. They can go online and see how we're spending their money. And I'm telling you, when that goes online, the quality of those contracts, the quality of the decisions that are made in Tallahassee, the care of that decision, understanding that they're about to put online how they are choosing to spend the people's money, you're going to see hundreds of millions of dollars saved.
Have you received any pushback in terms of this idea?
There is a lot of pushback. But what I need to say is that the governor and I are on the same page. He wants transparency. Okay. He wants to see every bit of information made available. But I can tell you, all those vendors that we speak of, all those people who are wanting to provide services, they're not the least bit interested in seeing the way they negotiated their contracts with the state put online. And so there's a lot of people in this town who are pushing back, afraid that someday I'll actually put a contract online that they negotiated with the state of Florida, and the state of Florida will see what they're getting for the money that they're getting and what they're delivering. And but I'm not going to stop fighting. I want that online.
It's possible also that some of the people in the state of Florida who negotiated those contracts might be nervous too. It'll put everybody in the spotlight, which citizens might like.
I think the citizens expect that they're going to have competitive bids for every contract, that vendors can get in and compete. They can sharpen their pencil and they can get the most competitive price. I think the people of Florida wonder whether certain members of government who have been in positions have friends who are providing services, and they just always seem to give the contract to that friend. We can put all that to bed. Transparency is accountability. And when you put that online, you're not afraid to say, this is the decision I made.
Well, if somebody does see something that looks a little funny,
right,
what can they do about it?
They can contact us, and that's what's been so helpful. I mentioned to you in the world of fraud, we actually have rewards that if you see anything going on that you think is suspicious, our office, one, has the responsibility to audit state contracts. And so the problem is that I can only audit once they're in place, once the ink is dried. And at that point, in just this past year, Steve, we had to settle 111 state contracts. That means contracts that were up and running, but when I saw, when the invoice came for me to pay the bill, I said, this just can't be true. I cannot pay this. We sit the contractor down, the vendor down, and say, what are you kidding? You're taking us to the cleaner. And so I had to actually settle over 100 contracts with individuals this past year and had to write checks to get them to go away. They would have beat us in court. It was a signed contract. And so we try what we call is we negotiate a settlement on those contracts. And so if you're suspicious about anything, please let my office know. That's myfloridacfo.com. Let us know and let us get on it.
Last session, one of the big insurance issues, a property insurance issue, was sinkhole insurance. Right. And as a result of the legislation, Citizens Insurance Company raised sinkhole insurance rates, in some cases exponentially, 420% or whatever. There was a huge outcry.
Right.
You basically said that the rate should not have been raised that high, that
right.
fast, and
That's
other
right.
people talked about it. Give us an update on
Sure.
sinkhole insurance and what's
Sure.
happened since then.
This is a really important issue, Steve. And the reason I was disappointed in the rate increase is because this is fraud-driven. When there's a hurricane and there are real losses, and rates go up to cover those real losses, you understand that as a catastrophic natural event that occurs. Sinkhole is all fraud-driven. Just this past week, I went down and met with the property appraisers of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, Hernando County. They showed me the maps where certain public adjusters, and I hate to tell you this, certain attorneys, have been going house to house getting people to file a sinkhole claim. And it's a mere crack in the stucco. And in fact, the fellow who had been in one of these jobs for 30 years said I can count on one hand the number of sinkholes that caused structural damage to the facility. And yet, I have 7,000 sinkhole claims presently in my county. And so every private carrier lost money and moved and quit. All the private carriers stopped writing the insurance because the fraud was so significant. So only Citizens is left offering coverage. So when you have Citizens last year that collected about $35 million in sinkhole premium, Citizens Insurance Company, and paid out over $240 million in claims, you can see why every private company left. We were putting them out of business. So it needs to incrementally move with real losses. That's what price needs to move, is with real losses. That price was moving because of fraud. We are your government. We go after the fraud. We beat the fraud and lower your costs. That's our job. No one can do that. The citizens are saying, where is my government? Who's fighting the fraud? So we just arrested individuals this past week, once again down in Pasco County, for the fraud of making false claims. So where is it at now? Now what we have established in law is redefined a sinkhole. A sinkhole is a catastrophic ground collapse. It's not a settling stucco crack that after 30 years every Floridian has in their home. It's a catastrophic ground collapse. If you're insured for that, we pay for that. But the value that has been lost in so many neighborhoods because everybody filed a claim, so now everybody is thinking this couldn't possibly be a neighborhood I could live in. The values of those homes have all fallen. Honest people have lost value in their property. That bill redefines sinkholes, so there's going to be fewer claims now going forward. Real claims will be paid, and the private market can return once they see that that Florida judges and juries uphold this new law, and they couldn't continue to just pay out for fraudulent claims. It's going to be a long pathway, Steve. This won't happen overnight, but now a newly defined law with what a sinkhole is can bring back private market. They'll compete on rate. They'll fight rates down because they won't have the fraudulent losses, and the people of Florida win. The long term, the near term is that we need to talk to the banking industry and say, you've got to think about not requiring sinkhole insurance, because there are so few and far between real sinkholes. You're making individuals pay an exorbitant price for something that doesn't occur except through fraud, and we're going to beat the fraud.